Thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I'm Joy Lim Nakrin. Just want to share with you some of the top legal stories that we're following right now, and I have a special guest joining us right now. We have attorney Suri Chadha Jimenez. So some of you may already know Suri because we've had him on before talking about the young thug case. And Suri, you're a defense attorney on that case. But I want to ask you about one of the other top legal stories that we're following right now, which concerns the former president, Donald Trump. So first, let me just lay out some of the details for everybody on what the latest is, what's been going on. So the former president is actually due in a courtroom tomorrow after a federal grand jury indicted him on 4 counts related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Part of that investigation actually stems from alleged election meddling right here in Georgia. So special counsel Jack Smith unveiled a historic indictment against the former president, charging him with conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. Okay, so let's bring back in Suri Chadha Jimenez. Suri, what is your take on these charges? Does any of this surprise you?
Well, I think that one of the things that is notable is the number of counts. It's only 4 counts. But that to me tells me that the prosecutors have taken their time, due diligence, have done everything they can to make sure that these 4 counts, they have evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Something to note about federal prosecutions. I mean, their conviction rate is astronomical. I think it's in the high 90%. That's because they don't bring cases forward unless they believe they have the evidence to prove it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. So, basically they're going for kind of quality over quantity in a way, is that they're going for charges that they know or that they believe are going to stick. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's go a little bit more into the details on this here. So the prosecutors here are alleging that Trump spread lies even though he knew that his claims were false. And they accuse him and 6 co-conspirators of organizing fake electors in 7 different states where he lost. Now, Trump has denied any wrongdoing. In a statement, his campaign actually called the indictment, quote, unprecedented political targeting. Meanwhile, it sounds like Trump's lawyers, right now, his legal team appears to be shifting blame onto the lawyers who were advising him at the time, his former attorneys. So what do you think, Suri, of this of this kind of defense, what looks like it may be a defense, kind of shifting blame to previous attorneys, and also this claim that it's unprecedented political targeting?
Well, how many times can you say unprecedented? This is the 3rd time that's unprecedented, and maybe in Fulton County there'll be a 4th one. So it stops being unprecedented when so many different jurisdictions believe that they have the evidence, and so many different grand juries have actually looked at the evidence and determined there's enough to go forward. One of the very key things that it stood to me in the indictment is, in essence, the preamble, the way they explain it, and the prosecutor did a great job in getting ahead of that criticism. I think one of the few first paragraphs goes and says, this president, just like any other person in the United States, has a right to free speech and say whatever they're going to say, even if they're lies, even if it's misleading. You have a right to do that. However, that's not all we're talking about. We're talking about actions. We're talking about plans. We're talking about conspiracies. And it doesn't matter if the person you conspire with is your attorney. The point that they start breaking the law, at that point, they become your co-conspirator, not your attorney anymore. Like, you and I can have a conversation, and maybe you want to get into the very lucrative business of selling marijuana. Well, it's not legal in this state. So if I start telling you ways to avoid getting caught, if I start giving you counsel in how to commit a crime, I am no longer your attorney. At that point, we're co-conspirators, and then we're both in it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the federal government is going to go with the same classic tail left. Ignorance is no defense. You are trying to overturn an election, and you can talk about it all you want. But the moment you start acting, you start committing crimes in furtherance of that, that's when you start getting yourself indicted in multiple jurisdictions.
That's very interesting. Okay, so I want to go take a little bit of a closer look here and unpack this a little more. So sources close to the investigation are saying that the indictment suggests that lawyers Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, as well as former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark could be the potential co-conspirators. Remember, as I mentioned before, prosecutors are alleging that Trump spread lies even though he knew that his claims were false, and also accused him and 6 co-conspirators of organizing these fake electors in 7 states that he lost. So now, again, it's these sources close to the investigation that are saying Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark could be the potential co-conspirators here. The special counsel hasn't confirmed the identities. This is just what sources are saying. Eastman's attorney has said in a statement that the indictment relies on misleading presentation of the record. Giuliani has said in a statement, in part, that this indictment, quote, eviscerates the First Amendment. There's a lot to unpack here, Suri. First of all, these 6 co-conspirators or alleged co-conspirators, what do you think that Rudy Giuliani, for instance, talking about high-profile potential, defendants here, you think he is actually among them?
Well, most likely he is one of the ones. Is also Mr. Sidney Powell, and I think it was key that you said at least one of them was a former employee or whatever the title was. But some of these people are also former attorneys.
Yeah.
They are no longer barred in their home states. Their bar license has been taken away because of the actions related to this incident. So that is very telling. I think that most likely Mr. Giuliani will be a co-defendant, and some of these other attorneys, if they're smart enough, they'll start to cooperate and try to get a deal, because it sounds like they have a lot of evidence. Because again, it's not only the free speech element, it is the actions they took in furtherance of their goal of overturning the election.
Yeah. So this indictment also documents a conversation between the former President Trump and the former White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, where Meadows says Georgia election workers were, quote, conducting themselves in an exemplary fashion. And then one day later, Trump tweeted that the election workers were trying to cover up fraud. So, there's some Georgia roots here looking at this indictment. The other thing that we're going to unpack a little bit more is the potential for indictments here in Fulton County, right? That's something that a local district attorney, Fonnie Willis, has been saying. We could expect, sometime this month, maybe by September, but, likely what we've been hearing is next week, or if not next week, then the week after, but something very soon here. The grand jury has been seated. Remember, first there was a special purpose grand jury that came up with the basis for what we have now, a grand jury that can issue indictments. So with this stuff happening, these new indictments on the federal level, is that going to play into what's happening here in Georgia?
I don't think so. I think that at least from what I know of Madam District Attorney Fonnie Willis, she will work the case at a very methodical and slow pace. I think that some people refer to her as she loves turtles, and then those turtles are representative of the way she does things. She will get.
Does she really love turtles?
Yes,
I've never heard that. She loves turtles.
That's what I've heard.
Really?
Next time you see her, give her a little turtle figurine. She'll love it. But she's very methodical about it, and she cares about the evidence to be proven in her jurisdiction. Other cases, what they might have to do, they might have to coordinate who goes first, who gets to the first bite of the apple. But that doesn't mean that because somebody else has indicted or failed to indict, that would affect the case in Georgia in any way whatsoever. The only thing that matters in Georgia is the evidence. Do they have enough evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt? And I think that's why it's taking so long.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, it is very interesting because, and again, just backing it up, I think probably our viewers know for now, but let me pull up our website so they see if they want to, if you guys are a little confused, because it is confusing. There multiple cases, multiple investigations going on involving the former president. But our website is, like, if you go on this tab right here, okay, on the left side, it says news, and then you scroll down to Donald Trump and click on that. I just want to show you. Then you get all the stories laid out for you, so you can kind of catch yourself up on what's been happening, because there have been so many headlines here. But this investigation here in Fulton County is also surrounding the 2020 election and alleged election interference. But one thing that's really interesting is that the District Attorney Fani Willis has given immunity to the electors, so-called fake electors. It's controversial to call them fake, so I don't know that I want to say that. But here in Georgia, and that wasn't done in some other states. And I just wonder, why was that done, Suri? It maybe does that mean that Fani Willis might want to use these electors as witnesses to try to gather more information and more evidence and really go for the big fish, meaning the former president? What do you think is going on with that?
Well, I mean, you say you don't want to say fake electors, and there's other terms that people probably don't want to say, because the reason that these people got immunity most likely is, and we're dealing with business people, we're dealing with politicians, we're dealing with highly educated, high-functioning members of society. We're not talking about, street dealers and gang members, as usually people like to address them, but for lack of a better term, they're snitches. They are willing to take a deal and snitch on their leader. And that's what this case is probably going to end up hanging on, the credibility of the people that have gained a benefit. They themselves will not be prosecuted in exchange for telling their truth. So a jury will decide, who do they believe? Again, just like we say in court all the time, it goes to credibility. And let's see what what the actual Fulton County jury, who they believe. Do they believe a former president that's going to say, I had no idea what was going on. I was just talking. I like to talk a lot. I never directed anybody to actually find some votes. I was just on a phone call and frustrated, right? That's probably going to be part of the argument. Or do you believe all these other people who are going to say, we had marching orders. We were told to go here, sign this document. We were also confused, but we knew what the ultimate outcome was. I think another part of the defense is going to be that nobody knew what was going on. They were all taking guidance from what they thought was lawyers. Lawyers gave them forms, told them, go ahead, show up to this place, sign your name. We are trying to challenge fraud. And in their mind, they were doing the right thing. That's going to be, I think, the main defense. They had no intent to commit a crime. Their only intent was to do the right thing and save the election in their mind.
That is a very interesting argument. There's so much here. That's why I've just clicked on this on our website, atlantanewsfirst.com, because it is confusing. We're talking, like the headline says, from New York to Miami, and a stop in between. Here's some of the legal challenges facing the nation's 45th president, because let's not forget, down in Florida, there's a classified documents case against him. He's got the issues in New York, right? The case involving the former adult film star, Stormy Daniels, and the hush money payments to Michael Cohen, his attorney there. And then there was that civil case out of New York as well. Involving kind of alleged sexual misconduct as well. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of legal trouble. But this latest indictment is the one that really hits closest, correct me if I'm wrong, in your assessment, hits closest to home, because it's the one that is related to possible interference in the 2020 election. And that's exactly what Fulton County DA Fani Willis is looking into, possible interference in the 2020 election. So my question to you is, just looking at the indictment, the fact that now there are 4 charges by the special counsel Jack Smith and we've got now Trump expected in federal court tomorrow. Again, 4 different counts related to these efforts to overturn the 2020 election on the federal level. Now, when we bring it back home to Fulton County, Georgia, does that indicate that we can expect to see indictments also related to the efforts to overturn the 2020 election? Because clearly there was enough evidence to come up with indictments on the federal level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's important to see here is that whatever happened in Fulton, whatever happened here in Georgia, in essence is the basis for the federal indictment. So at least one grand jury has already determined that the evidence that's presented to them was enough. It met the threshold of probable cause to move forward with a prosecution. So let's remember how grand juries work. They're secretive. We don't have access to it. The defendant, very few states in Georgia, if you're a law enforcement officer, you might have a right to be present and present some evidence. But in this case, Mr. Trump is not law enforcement, and he will not have a chance to be there and give his side of the story. Grand juries are very one-sided. It is the prosecutor showing up and showing their cards in secret just to the grand jury, and they determine, okay, yeah, it looks like it's more likely than not that this happened. Then the defendant will have a right to challenge this evidence at a future trial or at motions. But getting indicted, it is, sadly, a lot of people say here in Fulton County, even a ham sandwich can get indicted if the DA wants it to, because no one else is there but the prosecution to show the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that a lot. Any final thoughts on this, on all of this involving Trump? Because I got to ask you about the case that you're on as well.
Well, to link to that case, I really hope that it is managed in a much more efficient way.
Are you talking about Trump?
I'm talking about the Trump case. I hope that it's handled in a way that does not shut down our courthouse. He is not the only person that is entitled to a trial of his peers.
Yeah.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people waiting for trial just here in Fulton County.
And you're right. I mean, there's a big impact on Fulton County because, you know, we see the barriers up outside the courthouse, and we know that, you know, the DA, Fonnie Willis, has basically instructed courthouse employees, if it's appropriate, for them to work from home for their own safety. So you're concerned maybe that could impact other cases?
It impacts everybody. It impacts the entire society. There's people that need to go to magistrate court, need to go to state court just for regular day-to-day business. And then now they can't do it. Now they have facilitated it by making it available online. You can go to Zoom court. Now with pandemic supposedly it's done, but now you can still do Zoom court with magistrate court. Some people don't know how to use technology.
Yeah,
you are
absolutely.
restricting access to the
And
courts.
a lot of people don't have good Wi-Fi, all
Exactly.
that stuff. They don't have a computer. Absolutely, you're 100%.
So those are externalities. Those are things that I am hoping that the DA is taking into consideration when bringing these massive cases and, in essence, shutting down our courthouse.
Hey, I need to let our viewers know you were actually a Fulton County prosecutor yourself, right?
I worked there for about 2.5 years under the previous administration, which Mr. Howard.
Wow. Okay, so you really know the ins and outs of that courthouse, and you know what kind of impact this could have or is having.
I don't think anybody knows the ins and outs of that courthouse. It is so complex, and I still get lost sometimes,
Well,
and I feel bad for some people who is the first time there and they're extremely stressed, and they walk into a bunch of barricades and guards with guns and metal detectors, and all they wanted to do is get a copy of their marriage license.
Yeah, that's a lot. Hey, you know, Suri, so one of the reasons we keep having you back is because this case, the YSL case, because you are one of the defense attorneys on this case, and it's something that we've been following so closely. I mean, historically long jury selection process. I mean, they've been selecting a jury since the start of the year, and here we are in August. So what's going on with that? I'm hearing that the jury selection is finally winding down.
I hope so. I hope that we are close to the light at the end of the tunnel. We have been picking a jury next week is going to be 8 months. We started back in January, first week of January. The issue is that we are asking for a lot. We're asking members of the public, citizens of Fulton County, to put aside their life, their career, their profession, their family, their loved ones that they might be taking care of, and come sit with us and listen to the state tell them a story that's going to last 6 to 9 months. So that's a big ask, and that is why the court has taken a lot of time and a lot of efforts to make sure that people who have hardships have a chance to express those, and the ones that have legitimate hardships are excused, and we end up with a jury that will give us the attention that we deserve.
Sure. So I want to direct our viewers now to our website, because look at this. We have all of these updates about what's been happening with the YSL case. I mean, just look at these headlines, and we've organized it because there's so much to keep track of. Again, sort of like how I told you guys with the Trump, all the Trump coverage, we've organized it in a way on our website that I want to just see, so that if you're at home, you know how to find this information. You go click on that news tab right there, and then when you look under there, you actually see Young Thug Trial, and then you click on that, and then you can follow all the latest headlines, because there's a lot to keep track of, starting with the very first headline, leave the goats out of it. leave the goats out of it. We're laughing. But, Suri, what is that about? This is like a fight to get some evidence excluded, right?
Well, the problem here is that there's a lot of co-defendants, and a lot of these people have been arrested. And the manner in which somebody is arrested sometimes is relevant to the case. If you are trying one person, then that's it is what it is. They got arrested, and maybe they were wearing all purple, and that's the color of whatever group they claim is a criminal street gang. Or maybe, maybe they had no clothes on. They were running for the police right after getting out of the shower, and that might be relevant.
So, but specifically about this goat issue. So this is some fact about, one of the defendants was involved in like is it a goat sacrifice or something like that? Is that what this is about? And you guys want to have this evidence excluded?
Well, yeah, it seems that somebody, when they got arrested, when they found them and put handcuffs on them, they happened to be at a religious ceremony that might have involved the sacrifice of an animal. I'm pretty sure that is protected by the First Amendment. However, just like we're talking about it right now, some people might get turned off by that. They might find that offensive.
Right.
And that has absolutely nothing to do with the case in chief, with the case that is being tried. So the attorneys for Mr. Williams have requested that gets suppressed, that the jury doesn't get to hear that particular detail, because it can be overly prejudicial. If somebody has a tremendous love for animals and thinks that any sacrifice, including maybe somebody that's vegan and feels very strongly about not
Suri,
eating.
I feel like you're talking about me right now.
I think that you
Suri
love
knows- Suri
animals,
knows I'm
and they
vegan.
deserve, yes. Humphrey is beautiful, and
My
he
pig.
should not be making into bacon. And
That's right,
somebody
Suri.
that
Listen to that.
feels just like you might find that very offensive, and that would make him biased and not listen to the rest of the evidence, because if you kill a goat, you must be guilty of everything they accuse you of.
Well, no, I mean, hopefully, jurors are able to make that distinction and, not bring their bias into it. I would think that I can, but I understand. I mean, that's the argument of these defense attorneys, is that, it might prejudice the jurors in some way, so let's not even bring that into it, right?
Exactly. Why risk it? Let's focus on the actual evidence. Why risk somebody being biased? Because it can be unconscious bias as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's really not that relevant, is it?
Not at all.
So, another headline here on our website, AtlantaNewsFirst.com, read the witness list. So we've got some notable names on the witness list: Birdman Williams, Lil C Note, Killer Mike. Who do we expect to actually make it onto the witness stand out of these? All of them?
It seems that the state wants to put up a show that's going to last 6 to 9 months, which tells me they're going to call every single person that has ever interacted with this case, including celebrities that do not want to be here. They don't want to be part of this. I'm sure so many of the people that are on the witness list just don't want to be bothered by either the state or the defendants. However, the state has the power to force them to show up to court. So most likely, if plans go like they want it to go, we're going to hear from every single person for 6 to 9 months.
Wow. Any final thoughts? One thing I do want to ask you about. So, I remember we had not only you but several other defense attorneys in studio a few months ago because there was an issue regarding the pay, which many defense attorneys said really wasn't appropriate. Can you kind of give us an update on that?
Absolutely. I think it's an issue that's an ongoing and pervasive issue. Public defendants, conflict defendants, people that work for indigent defense are not compensated adequately. In this case, it was ridiculous. It was going to be $7,500 for what so far has been an 8-month trial, and it's likely going to be 13 to 14 months total of work, of active work in the courtroom, plus whatever investigation that we have to do outside the courtroom. So obviously that was too little. The people that are in charge of paying for our services for indigent defense have the board voted, and they gave us a significant increase. It's going to be $55,000 for the entirety of the case, broken up into monthly payments of $5,000, which is reasonable. It is still not adequate. There is not one person working as in indigent defense that is getting paid what they're worth. But it is what it is, because it's a sacrifice, it's a public service, and we knew what we were getting into, and I'm very thankful that they are compensating us what they can.
All right. Any final thoughts on this YSL case before we let you go?
Hopefully it'll be done soon. We need this to get over with so we can move on to other cases. There is a lot going on, and a lot of courts throughout Georgia and even federal courts are being affected because you have some of the best attorneys in the nation tied up in this case, and they're needed. They're needed somewhere else. Their clients need them, judges need them. So we hope that this will be over soon.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Suri Chadha Jimenez, YSL case attorney, defense attorney, former Fulton County prosecutor. So appreciate your expertise and analysis. Again, a reminder for our viewers, you want to check out AtlantaNewsFirst.com. Look at this, how we have these stories organized for you. What are the top stories on our website, but also we have all these tabs where you can check out the latest on the Young Thug trial. You can also check out the latest on the investigations, plural, into the former President Donald Trump and the indictments, plural, as well. We're going to keep you up to date with all the latest here on Atlanta News First Plus, Atlanta News First, and AtlantaNewsFirst.com. So have a great day. Thank you.